really what's the difference between Am Yisrael and many nations. But here in Yirmeyahu chapter 46, which this part is taken, by the way, it's from verse 13 to verse 28. This part is towards, as we said before, the last part of the book of Yirmeyahu that's dealing in general with the nations of the world. And here particularly opens up with the title, as I'm reading the first pasuk, Hadavar asher diber Hashem el Yirmeyahu Navi, Lavo Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel hakot et Eretz Mitzrayim. A very interesting opening. The king, we're told by the prophet, the king of Bavel is going to get an invite. And he's going to get an invite to start up, instigate matters with the with Eretz Mitzrayim. Some of you may know, when you read and study Yirmeyahu, that after the Churban of the Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, there are not few, but many even, that run away to Mitzrayim after the destruction. And that's exactly what the prophet here is talking about in the first 5 or 6 psukim regarding here Mitzrayim. He's talking about here the fleeing because of the sword of the enemy. The enemy is going to be Bavel, of course, destroying the first Beit HaMikdash. And Jews are going to be going down there and looking for shelter, obviously, looking to be protected. And here we're learning that the land of Mitzrayim is going to see war. For instance, skip to verse 18, Karusham Paro Melech Mitzrayim Sha'on, Ken He'evir HaMoed. There's going to be a lot of noise of war that's going to go on, and Paro will come out late to war. As it says, He'evir HaMoed is going to miss the time to go out to war, and Paro, of course, is going to lose by the king of Bavel, and many people are going to, in Mitzrayim, are going to blame Paro for the terrible loss. That's really not the main part that I wanted to deal with, but it's clear when we read the next psukim here, things that are going to happen to the land of Mitzrayim. If we skip right now to verse 20 and see what will happen, what disaster is going to come on to Mitzrayim. As you see, the prophet calls Mitzrayim a very famous nickname of affection, Eglaya Feifia Mitzrayim. Okay? This baby cow, this beautiful looking baby cow, called Mitzrayim. But what's going to happen? Keretz mitzafon bava. In other words, there are going to be people coming from the north. And they're going to be slaughtering Mitzrayim. And it's going to be doomsday and a period of time for the Egyptians here. In other words, what we're going to be seeing here, that just like in our Parashat, Mitzrayim is being whipped, is being played, is going through vast destruction. That too will be happening later on, obviously as a punishment for things that they did, both to the Jewish people in the last periods and other things that are going wrong. But if Mitzrayim thinks that their destiny is to be saved and they're going to attack Israel, of course that's wrong. We see here towards the end of the Haftarah, if we go on and skip to Kafhei, verse 24 rather, Kafdalid, Hovisha bat Mitzrayim nitna biyad am tzafon. Okay, a nickname, bat Mitzrayim. You're going to be in shame. Why? I'm going to use the northern kingdom, which will be Babylon, of course, you're going to be delivered into their hands. Who says all of this? Amar Hashem Tzavaot in verse 25, the God of Israel. Hineni foked el amon mino. God says, I'm going to remember. I'm going to bring upon Mitzrayim. Amon mino is a famous god and city The Greeks called it Tebai, but it served as the capital of Mitzrayim, this place called Amon Mino, for many, many years. I'm going to come and bring destruction on it, number one. V'al Paro, number two. V'al Mitzrayim. V'al Eloah, their gods. V'al Melachai, even their kings. V'al Paro, again, he's mentioned a second time. There's certainty here. God is informing Am Yisrael, the world, that the army of Bavel will come on top of the army of Mitzrayim, much larger in number. The Egyptian army will not be able to withstand them. The Egyptians are going to be destroyed. Those that with Paro, those that trust Paro, as it says here in verse 26, Ve unitatim biyad mivakshei nafsham. God says through the prophet, I'm going to, all those aforementioned in the pasuk above, I'm going to deliver them, I'm going to deliver them, uviyad Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel, uviyad avadav, into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar and all the people that are working for him, and his soldiers and so on. V'achrechen tishkon ki mekedem nu'um Hashem. After this disaster coming upon Egypt, maybe Mitzrayim will get another chance to do tshuva. They'll be able to return to their land. They'll be able to live in tranquility like most of the years they lived before. They're going to get a chance. But Am Yisrael has to know that here in Mitzrayim, don't think you're going to be able to find shelter. Don't think you're going to be able to buy a house and build a nice Jewish community there and stay there for a long time. Rather, God has dinim. And it's quite suitable, isn't it, between this and our Parsha of the week where we're seeing din there as well. Judgment is being done, makot are being done to there. At the same time, should the Jewish people have fear of the situation, maybe, God forbid, destruction will be brought to them after the Churban Habayit. They may not come back to the land of Israel. So here in the last three psukim that we see here, Kaf Zayin and Kafchet, actually two long psukim, very, very large, lengthy psukim that we usually don't see. Here, the prophet is comforting, supporting the Jewish people, that they don't have to have this fear that the Egyptians should have. Why? V'ata, and you, al tira avdi Yaakov, right? This famous expression, it's published in our Sidurim or the Zmirim of Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat. There's a famous song, Al Tira Avdi Yaakov, okay? Amar Hashem Yaakov, God said to Jacob, don't be afraid. So we have the similar expression here, okay? So these two psukim are brought here in the style of contrast, as opposed to what's going to be happening that Yirmeyahu is prophesizing, the disaster, the difficult matters which will come on the Egyptian kingdom. Here he's bringing nechama, okay? A little nechama, because right now we're going to be talking about the destruction of the temple. Yerushalayim is destroyed. The Jews are going to be exiled out to Bavel. Yet, we don't have to what? Be afraid that such terrible destruction will come to the Jewish people. Al tira avdi Yaakov, you're my servant Jacob. Val techat Yisrael, poetically. Tira, techat. Two different words for fear. Avdi, Yaakov, Yisrael. Don't have to have fear in this poetic way. Why? Even if you're far away, you're still under God's atmosphere, you're still under God's ability to rescue you. Even if you are rachok. Vetzaracha, God can save your seed, your children, me'eret shivyam, the land of captivity. Okay? The land of captivity could be here in Mitzrayim or later, Bavel. V'shav Yaakov, Jacob will return, meaning from the Galut. V'shakat, v'sha'anan, two beautiful words that are talking about the tranquility, the peace that the Jewish people will be having. Okay? V'ein macharid, you don't have to be trembling in fear. And again, the prophet comforts Israel through Jeremiah, through Yirmeyahu. In verse 28, do you see it? Ata. Al tira avdi Yaakov, again a second time, Nu'um Hashem, ki itcha ani. Here's the reason why. I'm with you. We're indivisible. We cannot be divided. We can't be disconnected. Where will I do total disaster? Ki esech chala b'chol hagoyim, asher dachlicha shama. Disaster is going to come. To who? To the nations of the world. I'm going to finish them off. The ones that came and destroyed what? Your temple. And what? Dispersed you shama there, to Babylon, to Iraq, to Iran. Ve'otcha, whereas you, lo e'esech chala. You will not be finished off. V'yisarticha lamishpat v'nakei lo anakeka. Okay? He's saying here that although judgment will be done, affliction will be done, but v'nakei lo anakeka. The last words here is that you will. What is the wording v'nakei lo anakeka mean, gentlemen? Huh? I will not what?
I will not wipe you.
I will not wipe you out totally. We can be punished, we can be injured, we can be hurt, but we're never going to be finished off because God loves us. We're His nation. So here we see clearly in these last two psukim the designation of the Jewish people and the major difference between Israel and the nations of the world, where those nations that are continuing doing idolatry, and maybe we have hope to find shelter there like Mitzrayim, don't plan to be there too long because they're going to be doomed. They're going to go through other strikes, just like we see in our Parashat, so too here in the time of Jeremiah. So the gods of Egypt will be hit, maybe like the 10 Makot, the Talmud says. And that's more or less what we're learning here, is that, yes, the Egyptians will return to their land, but they're going to be devastated very much. The Jews will return to the land and find a lot of consolation. They will not be wiped out. Mitzrayim today, where is the great Egyptian empire? Where is the great Babylonian empire? They no longer exist. The faces have changed, the cultures have changed, the people have changed. They're no longer on the map. The fact that there's a nation called Iraq and Iran in that area, it's not the original Babylonian empire, nor is the Egyptian people down south. The Egyptian empire of that, they don't exist today. A major reason, like Rabbi said yesterday, and it's brought in the book of Daniel, and the Talmud explains it, that God's plan is they're going to rise kingdoms that are going to put their hands on the Jewish people, whether physically or culturally and spiritually. And because they're going to do that, they're going to lose their right to exist. They think they're doing the right thing, okay? And therefore, all these empires will no longer exist. And this is a main point that maybe has to do with the question with Egypt subjecting us. There's a very famous question. Should Egypt really be punished? Aren't they performing God's will? Okay. God said to Avram Avinu that your seed, the seed of Avram 400 years later, will be subdued, subjected, become servants, and they'll be afflicted, and then they'll leave with a lot of wealth. So what are you punishing the Mitzrayim? Didn't they do Hashem's will? Answer. Answer. Very good. It doesn't say our kids are going to be thrown into the Nile. God didn't prophesize that they're going to kill our children. And therefore, Mitzrayim, upon them was not decreed a decree that they're gonna so much go overboard, like you're saying, and afflict us so much, take away our freedom of choice, and don't allow us to exist and build families. And even though God's miracles happened, so Egypt did way much more than God foretold Avram Avinu in this prophecy. And therefore, certainly they deserve affliction in the Makot of our Parsha. And here, hundreds of years later, in other words, we're talking about 800 years later, right? It took about 440 years approximately to build the Beit HaMikdash, and it existed 410 years. Here, Jeremiah is talking about the destruction. After the destruction of the temple, Jews are going to find refuge in Egypt. Don't stay there too long because they're going to be destroyed. They're going to be hit because they deserve with all their idolatry and all the lies that they did, and so on and so forth. So yes, Egypt deserved then and deserves here in this chapter great destruction for the things they did against the Jewish people. Whereas in contrast, it's not going to happen to the Jewish people. Why? You're my family, you're my children, you're my nation, you're my heart. And therefore, even if you're going to be far, far away, I'm going to rescue, like it says here in verse 27. We'll stop here and can now